If you are stuck in any rank, there is a core mistake that you are making. And this mistake is the one thing that is holding you back and quickly climbing the ladder. So we're gonna break down one mistake for every single rank so that you can climb as quickly as possible all the way to Immortal and beyond. Now, the first rank we gotta talk about is Iron. And the problem with coming up with one mistake you're making in Iron is you are realistically doing many things wrong to be stuck in Iron. Now, this might seem like a bad thing, but it's actually a great thing because that means that there are so many things that you can change and climb out of Iron. But here are the three most common problems that is keeping someone in Iron. Number one, having terrible settings and equipment. This could be playing on a laptop that has 10 frames per second over Wi-Fi. This could be playing on a mouse pad that is the size of a Coke can. While settings aren't the end-all be-all and a truly great player can climb even with bad settings and equipment, sometimes it can be really hard for you to learn properly and even play a functional game when your settings and equipment isn't on point. We have a lot of videos on this channel covering this exact thing, so check them out if you need more details. But the number two problem that an Iron player has is playtime. If you're legitimately stuck in Iron watching this video and you have under 100 hours played in Valorant, you need to just go queue up. Stop watching videos, stop trying to learn more about the game. You need repetition, and you're only gonna get that by actually playing. There's a lot that you can learn from watching and studying and practicing, but more importantly than anything is to be able to contextualize the game. You need to have a certain amount of repetitions and familiarity with many of the maps, agents, and factors in the game. This goes double for players that haven't played a lot of first-person shooters. You really need to put in that playtime first before you're going to be able to move past any sort of the awkward phase that happens at the start of picking up a game. And number two, we do got to talk about bronze. And the biggest problem that I see when I VOD review and look at bronze gameplay is inconsistent or just non-functional ability use. Players that just pretend they don't have abilities at all. They'll never use their abilities. They'll die often without using their abilities, or they just use their abilities randomly. They just kind of throw them out in random situations. There's not really a reasoning for the ability use. They just kind of doing it because they can. And I want you to be really deliberate about how you're using your abilities. Every single ability that you use, you should be able to justify why. Oh, I use this flash because maybe there's someone behind this corner. Now, we could talk about whether or not that was a good or bad flash looking at the VOD, but at least you had a purpose and you used your utility. You didn't just randomly throw it out. You didn't just not throw it out and die. This is super, super important. And another thing that happens to a lot of bronze players is they'll pop into like a fixed animation ability and they'll die. Something like droning super close to the choke and then dying. You need to get used to the idea of clearing a certain area and then using your utility to clear further, not whipping out your abilities while you're running into the choke, because what if there's someone there? What if someone peeks you? You need to know that that's always a possibility. So whether you have your flash out, you get killed. Whether you're in your drone, you get swung. These are the things that can make it so a player never wants to whip out your utility, but if you do the proper setups, you're gonna be able to use your utility, win a lot of free gunfights with people that are just kind of standing there, not positioned well, and oftentimes win games just from this alone. Now, granted, you need to start developing your aim right now as well. If you want to climb to silver, gold, plat, diamond, ascendant, you need to start practicing your aim because your aim takes a long time to develop. It's not something that you can just grind for a week and get amazing aim. So you need a proper routine, and you need to start grinding that mechanical skill so that it will keep up with the rank you're in and won't be the thing that's holding you back. And that's why our Aim God course on the SkillCapped website is the best thing that you could start doing today so that you can consistently climb through silver, gold, plat, diamond, ascendant, and you'll never hit a roadblock again. We give you everything that you need to develop your mechanical skills step by step and quickly earn that God aim status. And with our money back guarantee, if you don't climb, you don't pay. So check it out right now, risk-free, in the links down below. The next rank we got to talk about is silver. And in silver rank, a lot of players will kind of just do whatever they want to do. They do their own thing often, but I need you to start positioning so that you can actually properly trade. Keep the random lurking to a minimum and stop forcing fights when you're by yourself over and over again. You need to be ready so that if your teammate dies, you can swing and trade out that player. As long as you do this, you're going to be consistently winning fights, and you're almost always going to be at parity in many different situations, especially when everyone else is just fighting by themselves. Now, a lot of silver players will have a teammate die and they are afraid to swing or trade that out. You need to be the person that responds to that immediately. If someone dies on your team, you know where they died from, you have information about where they are, and they are not going to be ready for someone else to swing them nearly as much with their recoil going crazy. They're not perfectly ready to fight that engagement. So swinging and trading is something that is simultaneously positioning near your team so that you're always ready to trade or get traded, and also not being afraid to swing when your teammate gets killed. This overall is one of the most important concepts that will get you out of silver, just making sure that you're not taking isolated engagements, trying to be the hero all the time. And especially in situations where you're 2v1, try not to clear multiple angles by yourself. Stack with your teammates and cover each other so that you're ready to take that trade at any moment. Now, the next rank is the gold rank, and I'm actually putting 2 mistakes for this rank in particular because number 1 is crosshair placement. I've been doing a lot of VODs of gold players lately, and I just see crosshairs on the floor. Players are not putting their crosshair at the proper place. I know this seems like a really simple reuse tip over and over again, but I can't tell you how important it is to do this right. There are a lot of lines and places on the map that can help you line up proper crosshair placement. So just try to do that more and really try to remind yourself of this every single game, every single life, and you'll get a lot better at it. And then number 2 is just optimal buying and selling. Way too many players are just buying kind of randomly, not lining up their buys with their team, making it so that they don't have enough money to buy armor and utility for the preceding round. You need to be a bit more disciplined with your buying and selling. And I know it feels like you should always buy something so that you have a chance to win a round, but you're basically, instead of having some rounds where you're 50% impact and other rounds where you're 100% impact, you're like rocking a 65% impact every round of the entire game. And that's not what you want to do. You want to have rounds that you have a higher chance of winning and really invest in a full kit that round, so that you can win that round to convincingly carry that economy into the future rounds. This is so important, and one of the ways that you start kind of snowball your losing of rounds is you lose like 1, 2, 3 rounds, and then all of a sudden buying properly goes out the window. Everyone's just trying to gamble, buy whatever, and then you're setting yourself up for failure so that you keep losing close rounds over and over and over again, never quite doing enough to carry or win that round. And then you just lose the entire game because y'all can't be disciplined about your buying and selling, instead of actually taking a stand, eating a loss on the chin, not buying anything, and then really buying the next round, giving yourself a chance to win and flip that advantage. Now we have Plat, and in Plat, players are losing because they're gambling way too much. And the best question I can ask you is, do you have some games where you pop off and another game where you get completely shut down? Well, this really happens when players kind of just gamble their sight takes and the way they play. I think a great example of this is someone that just will randomly swing out onto site and they'll only clear like left. And if there's anyone right, they'll just die. Some of the time they do die, and some of the time they just don't and get to actually get a free kill because they just hard cleared one side and not the other. What you essentially did here is you made a gamble play that is not correct, but sometimes might work. And this is the thing that can kind of hold Plat players back more than any other rank, because they think that they are doing the right play sometimes, but their teammates are changing. So that's what's going wrong. But really, it's how you're playing. That's what's going wrong, because instead of playing a disciplined play where you kind of scale out the site, clear every corridor, use your utility to make sure that you're taking isolated engagements, you are just gambling multiple places, not kind of playing around an enemy playing in a number of locations. You need to imagine that there are many locations that an enemy could be playing in, and you can't do things that basically make you dead to one place and alive if they're in another place, because you're just flipping a coin. And we're not flipping a coin to win our fights. We are legitimately setting up situations where it doesn't matter where they are, we're still playing around that location and we're still giving ourselves a chance to win. Now, the next rank up is Diamond, and in Diamond, ego is the core problem that many of y'all are facing. Everyone in Diamond thinks they're 10s, but you're probably not 10s if I'm being honest with you. But really, it comes down to players fighting oftentimes without proper reason to fight. They'll see an enemy, the enemy will know they're there, and then they'll just wide swing them, challenge them because they're gonna one-tap them, right? Wrong. If you're fighting someone again that knows your location, you should almost always back that up with another player or a piece of utility. Fighting again blind is pure ego. You put the advantage in the enemy's court. They know where you are. They know where you're going to swing from. They could change their position. They have the advantage in that engagement. And instead of, using a flash, swinging with a teammate, you are just swinging out and just hoping and praying that your opponent is far worse than you. And This is not how you should be taking gunfights. You should not be relying solely on your mechanical skill to win them. You should be making it so that even if that player is an amazing aimer, even if that player is 10s, you put yourself in an advantaged fight so that you can kind of level that playing field. So you don't want to just be ego swinging everybody. This is going to work less and less as you go up against better and better players, and it's really important to be disciplined in this regard. In addition to that, players in Diamond will often hero buy. They'll make bad buys. They'll have these sloppy mistakes that really add up to them losing the game. Sometimes you'll pop off and get 3 with your Sheriff, but most of the time you won't. And it doesn't mean you buy a Sheriff every single time. So then for the rest of the game, you're using a light armor with the Vandal and no utility. This is how we lose games because we're relying so much on our mechanical skill, expecting it to be the difference maker, and it's not consistent enough to win games. Now moving on to the Ascendant rank, what you need more than anything here is consistency. And a lot of Ascendant players are not consistent with their mechanics, with their aim, with their decision making. Oftentimes they are all over the place, and the way to get that consistency is by building in a certain routine where you practice. Maybe you aim train, maybe you study, and then you play. You're consistently going through the same motions over and over again, and you're trying to find little mistakes that you're making and little things that you can work on every single day. The reason that players could get stuck in Ascendant is because they consistently are grinding games, but they're not learning anything from every single game. They have some games they do well, they have some games they do poorly, but they're not learning anything, they're not improving anything. They've kind of hit a plateau, and you can hit this plateau and not improve for many, many more games. But if you build a disciplined routine where you're practicing certain fundamentals, then you're always making steady steps to get that rank that you want, and you're not going to stagnate nearly as much. Now in Immortal, oftentimes it's hard to know what mistake an Immortal player is making because they're doing a lot of things right, but they could be doing many things wrong as well, because there's really a lot of ways to get to Immortal, and you really have to ask yourself, what did I do to get to Immortal? Did I have amazing aim, decision making, fundamentals? And you need to start working on your core weaknesses. Another thing that you need to start doing is eliminating mistakes, and the only way you're going to be able to find what your mistakes are is through coaching and VOD review. In this rank, more than any other rank, I think being hypercritical of the mistakes you're making and learning why you're making what decision is vital to develop more as a player and start getting better and better. And of course, scrimming can help you understand a deeper side of the game. Last up is Radiant, and Radiant players are not making consistent mistakes. That's why they're in Radiant. In fact, they need to be able to do everything their role dictates and then more. They need to be better, they need to aim better, they need to have sharper decision making, and they need to completely eradicate mistakes. Many players know that at the top, skill compounds, and in a lot of ways, climbing from Iron to Radiant is easier than climbing from Radiant to a top tier pro player. The gap becomes ever increasing the higher in rank you go, and a Radiant player that gets to Radiant for the first time can finally feel the difference between them and a tier 1 pro. It's insane, and it requires you to dedicate even more time, discipline, and effort into bridging that gap. I think at this stage you have to be real with yourself and ask what you truly want out of Valorant, but even still, in achieving this goal, you've done something that very few people can do, so congratulations. That being said, if you want to climb to any rank and you're struggling in any of the ranks we talked about, you're definitely going to want to check out SkillCapped.com, where we have guides over many different agents, mechanical courses, and movement guides so that you can quickly climb the ranks. Check it out right now in the links down below.